The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., piercing through the silence of Tasha Coleman's tiny apartment. She jolted awake, her heart pounding as she fumbled for her cell phone on the nightstand. The glowing screen showed an unknown number. Her first thought was her daughter's school or maybe the hospital. Something terrible must have happened. Hello? Her voice came out rough with sleep and fear. Heavy, labored breathing filled her ear. Then a weak voice, barely above a whisper. Please. Please don't hang up. I need someone. Anyone. Tasha sat up straighter, pushing her braids back from her face. The voice belonged to a man older, and he sounded like he was in serious pain. Sir, are you okay? Do you need me to call 911? I'm at the hospital already. A wet cough interrupted his words. Montgomery Memorial. Room 804. I don't want to die alone. Please. Tasha's throat tightened. She could hear the fear, the raw desperation in this stranger's voice. Every instinct told her this was real. This wasn't a prank or a scam. This was a human being reaching out in his darkest moment. What's your name? She asked gently, already swinging her legs out of bed. Richard Hawthorne. Another cough, this one sounding painful. I'm sorry. I meant to call someone else. But you answered. You actually answered. I'm here, Tasha said, keeping her voice calm even as her mind raced. I'm listening. The doctors say my heart is failing. Pneumonia in both lungs. They're doing everything they can, but I heard them talking outside my room. They don't think I'll make it through the night. His breath hitched. I built this whole life, this empire, and now I'm lying here in the dark with no one. Not a single person who cares if I live or die. Tasha felt tears prick her eyes. She thought about her own husband, James, who had died 3 years ago in a car accident. She remembered those final hours in the hospital, how grateful she'd been to hold his hand, to tell him she loved him one more time. The thought of anyone dying alone without that comfort broke something inside her. Richard, listen to me. You're not alone right now. I'm right here with you. But you don't even know me. His voice cracked. Why would you care about a stranger? Because you're not just a stranger. You're a person who's scared and hurting, and that matters. That's enough. For a long moment, there was only the sound of his breathing, ragged and uneven. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, will you come? I know it's crazy. I know I have no right to ask. But please. I can't face this alone. Tasha looked at the time. Nearly midnight. She had to work in the morning, a double shift at the grocery store to make up for last week's missed hours. Her daughter Bree had school. They lived paycheck to paycheck and every hour mattered. But this mattered too. Maybe more than anything else right now. What hospital did you say? Montgomery Memorial? Room 804. Hope crept into his voice, fragile and desperate. You'll really come? Yes, I'm coming. Just hold on, Richard. Hold on for me. She hung up and immediately went to her daughter's room. Bree lay curled under her blanket, her brown skin smooth and peaceful in sleep. At 8 years old, she was small for her age, with bright eyes that missed nothing and a heart bigger than the world. Baby, wake up. Tasha gently shook her shoulder. We need to go help someone. Bree's eyes opened, confused but trusting. Right now. Right now. There's a man at the hospital who needs us. He's very sick and very scared, and he has no one. Bree sat up, rubbing her eyes. Is he going to die, Mama? Tasha's chest ached. Her daughter had learned too much about death too young. I don't know, sweetheart. But we're going to be there with him so he's not alone. That's what we can do. Okay. Bree climbed out of bed without complaint. Should I bring my library book? Papa James liked it when I read to him in the hospital. Tasha pulled her daughter into a tight hug, breathing in the coconut scent of her hair. That's a wonderful idea, baby. Get dressed in something comfortable. We might be there a while. 20 minutes later, they were in Tasha's old Honda, driving through the quiet streets. Tasha kept her hand steady on the wheel, but her mind spun with questions. What was she doing? This was insane. She was taking her young daughter to a hospital in the middle of the night to sit with a dying stranger. But she couldn't turn back. That voice on the phone, the raw fear and loneliness, it haunted her. She thought about all the times after James died when she'd felt so alone, when the grief threatened to swallow her whole. The kindness of strangers had saved her then. A neighbor who brought meals. A coworker who covered her shifts. The librarian who let Bree stay after hours while Tasha worked late. Kindness mattered. It was the only thing that really mattered. Montgomery Memorial Hospital rose before them, a massive building of glass and steel. This was where the wealthy came, where people with money got the best care. Tasha had only been here once for Bree's broken arm 2 years ago, and the bill had nearly destroyed them. She parked in the visitor lot and took Bree's hand. Remember to be quiet and respectful, okay? Hospitals are serious places. I remember from when Papa James was sick, Bree said softly. They walked through the sliding doors into the bright, sterile lobby. A security guard sat at the desk, looking bored. His name tag read Wilson. He looked up as they approached, his eyes narrowing slightly. Can I help you? His tone suggested he didn't want to help at all. We're here to see Richard Hawthorne. Room 804. Wilson consulted his computer, frowning. Mr. Hawthorne isn't taking visitors. He's in critical care. He called me. He asked me to come. Tasha kept her voice firm. Please. He's alone up there and he's scared. Ma'am, it's after midnight. Visiting hours ended at 9. I can't just let anyone up to see patients, especially not in critical care. Tasha leaned forward, her voice dropping low and urgent. That man is dying. He has no family here, no friends. He called me because he didn't want to face his last hours alone. Are you really going to stop me from giving him that comfort? Wilson shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Bree, who was watching him with wide, solemn eyes. Please, Bree said quietly. We just want to help. The security guard sighed heavily. Fine. But if the nurses kick you out, that's on them. 8th floor, turn right off the elevator. Thank you, Tasha said, meaning it. Thank you so much. They rode the elevator in silence. Tasha's heart hammered against her ribs. What would she find in room 804? What if he'd already died? What if the nurses refused to let them stay? The 8th floor was quiet, dimmed for night. Only a few lights glowed at the nurses' station. A tired-looking nurse with red hair pulled back in a bun looked up as they approached. We're here for Richard Hawthorne, Tasha said. Room 804. The nurse's expression softened slightly. Family? Tasha hesitated, then decided on the truth. No. He called me. He asked me to come. The nurse studied her for a long moment, then glanced at Bree. That poor man has been alone up here for 3 days. His assistant drops off clothes and paperwork but never stays. I've never seen anyone so isolated. She stood, gesturing down the hall. Come with me. They followed her past several closed doors to room 804. The nurse knocked gently, then pushed the door open. Mr. Hawthorne? You have visitors. The room was large and private, filled with medical equipment that beeped and hummed. In the center, almost lost in the big hospital bed, lay a man who looked much older than he probably was. His skin had a grayish tinge, his cheeks hollow. An oxygen mask covered his nose and mouth. 4 lines snaked from both arms. Monitors blinked and chirped, tracking his vital signs. But his eyes, when they opened and found Tasha standing in the doorway, blazed with such relief and gratitude that she felt it like a physical force. You came, he whispered, his voice muffled by the oxygen mask. You actually came. Tasha walked to his bedside, Bree close beside her. I told you I would. I'm Tasha, and this is my daughter Bree. Richard's eyes filled with tears. His hand, pale and trembling, reached toward her. Without hesitation, Tasha took it, folding his cold fingers in her warm ones. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you for being kind to a stranger. Have you ever received a call that changed your life forever? A moment where a stranger's desperate voice reached through the darkness and asked you to choose compassion? This is one of those stories. If it touches your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever helped a stranger in need or wished you had? Your story matters too. The nurse, whose name tag read Patricia, brought 2 chairs into the room. I'll let you stay, but if his condition changes, you'll need to step out so we can work. Understood. Of course, Tasha said, settling into the chair beside Richard's bed. Bree climbed into the other chair, pulling her library book from her backpack. Patricia checked Richard's vitals, adjusting his 4 and making notes on her tablet. Your oxygen levels have actually improved in the last few minutes, she said, sounding surprised. Heart rate is more stable too. Richard's eyes remained fixed on Tasha. She could see him struggling to stay conscious, fighting against exhaustion and medication. His hand still gripped hers like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to life. Tell me about yourself, Tasha said softly after Patricia left. You said your name is Richard Hawthorne. What do you do? I run a company. Hawthorne Industries. We do tech manufacturing. His voice was barely audible through the oxygen mask. 50,000 employees worldwide. Billions in revenue. I spent my whole life building it. That's impressive, Tasha said. Is it? Richard's eyes closed briefly. I worked 16-hour days. Missed every holiday. Never married. Pushed away anyone who tried to get close. I told myself it was worth it, that the company mattered. But now I'm here and the company keeps running without me. No one even notices I'm gone. Bree looked up from her book. That's sad. Everyone should have people who notice them. Richard's gaze shifted to the little girl. How old are you, sweetheart? 8. I'm in 3rd grade. My teacher is Mrs. Patterson and she's really nice. She lets me help grade papers sometimes. Sounds like you're a good student. I try. Mama says education is important because it opens doors. Bree smiled at him. What was your favorite subject when you were in school? Math. I liked how numbers always made sense. They never lied or let you down. Richard coughed, his whole body shaking. Tasha reached for the cup of water on his bedside table, holding the straw to his lips. He sipped gratefully. People can let you down, Tasha said. But they can also lift you up. You just have to let them. I forgot how, Richard admitted. Or maybe I never learned. My parents divorced when I was 10. They spent the next 8 years fighting over me like I was another asset to be divided. When I turned 18, I left and never looked back. I swore I'd never need anyone. Everyone needs someone, Bree said matter-of-factly. That's what makes us human. Richard's laugh turned into another cough. You're very wise for 8 years old. She is, Tasha agreed, smoothing her daughter's hair. After her father died, she helped me more than I helped her. She gave me reasons to get up every morning. How did he die? Richard asked quietly. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. James died instantly. He was on his way home from his second job. We were saving up to move to a better neighborhood, somewhere with good schools for Bree. Tasha's voice remained steady, though the pain never really faded. It's been 3 years. Some days are easier than others. I'm sorry, Richard said. That must have been devastating. It was. But I had Bree and I had friends who showed up. My neighbor Mrs. Chen brought food every day for 2 months. My coworker Paula covered my shifts until I could function again. The people at our church collected money to help with funeral costs. Tasha squeezed his hand gently. I learned that accepting help isn't weakness. It's being human. Richard was quiet for a long moment. The machines beeped steadily, marking time. Finally he spoke. I don't know how to do that. Accept help. I've spent so long being the one in control, the one with all the answers. Maybe that's why you're here, Tasha suggested. Maybe you needed to learn that it's okay to be vulnerable. That needing people doesn't make you weak. Mr. Hawthorne? A new voice interrupted. A young man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway holding a briefcase. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened and dark circles under his eyes. I'm sorry to intrude. I'm Jeremy Walsh, Mr. Hawthorne's personal assistant. Security called to say he had visitors. Come in, Richard said, his voice stronger than before. Jeremy entered hesitantly, his eyes taking in Tasha and Bree with obvious confusion. I don't mean to be rude, but who are you? I'm Tasha Coleman. Richard called me tonight. Jeremy's confusion deepened. Called you? Oh, why? Wrong number, Richard said. Best mistake I ever made. I've been trying to reach your family, Jeremy said, addressing Richard. Your sister Angela finally answered. She's in Seattle with her family. She said she'll try to come this weekend if her schedule allows. Richard's expression didn't change, but Tasha saw the hurt flicker in his eyes. If her schedule allows. Of course. I can keep trying other contacts, Jeremy offered weakly. Don't bother. The people on my contact list are business associates. They care about Hawthorne Industries, not about me. Richard paused, breathing heavily. You should go home, Jeremy. Get some sleep. Send any urgent documents to my email. I'll review them tomorrow. But sir, you're in critical condition. The doctors said. I know what the doctor said. But I'm not dying tonight. I have people here with me now. Richard glanced at Tasha and Bree. Real people who came because they care, not because they're on my payroll. Jeremy looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. He nodded slowly. I'll check in tomorrow morning. Please call if you need anything. After he left, Richard turned back to Tasha. That boy works 90 hours a week for me. He's brilliant, ambitious, completely dedicated. And I don't know a single personal thing about him. Not if he's married, not what he does for fun, nothing. It's not too late to change that, Tasha said. Tomorrow when he comes back, ask him about his life. Really listen to the answer. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. People make it complicated. Tasha smiled. You're not a bad person, Richard. You're just someone who forgot how to connect. That's fixable. Bree yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Tasha checked her phone. Nearly 2 in the morning. Baby, why don't you lie down on that couch? You need to sleep. But I want to stay awake with you and Mr. Richard, Bree protested even as her eyes drooped. I'll still be here when you wake up, Richard promised. Thank you for coming, Bree. It means more than you know. Bree walked to his bedside and gently patted his arm. You're going to be okay, Mr. Richard? I can tell. You have kind eyes. People with kind eyes don't die. Tasha felt tears sting her eyes as she watched her daughter's simple faith. Bree settled on the couch, using her backpack as a pillow. Within minutes she was asleep. She's amazing, Richard said softly. You've raised an incredible child. She's the best thing I ever did, Tasha agreed. Some days when everything else is falling apart, I look at her and know that at least I got that one thing right. Tell me about your life, Richard said. I want to know about you. So Tasha told him. About growing up in Detroit, about meeting James in college, about their dreams of building a good life together. About working at the grocery store, taking every extra shift she could get. About the small apartment they could barely afford, the car that broke down constantly, the constant juggling of bills and necessities. I'm not going to pretend it's easy, she said. There are nights I lie awake wondering how I'll make rent. Days when I'm so tired I can barely stand. But I have Bree and I have hope. That's enough to keep going. Richard listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. How do you do it? Stay positive when life is so hard. Because the alternative is giving up, and that's not an option. I have a daughter who depends on me. Besides, hard doesn't mean hopeless. Every day good things happen too. Bree brings home a good grade. A stranger smiles at me in line. The sunset is beautiful. Those moments matter just as much as the struggles. I can't remember the last time I noticed a sunset, Richard admitted. I can't remember the last time I noticed much of anything except profit margins and stock prices. Then maybe this is your chance to start, Tasha said. You're alive, Richard. You're breathing. That's not nothing. He was quiet for a while, his breathing gradually becoming steadier. The machines showed his vitals continuing to stabilize. Patricia came back to check on him, looking pleasantly surprised. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, she told Tasha. His numbers are better than they've been in days. After she left, Richard spoke again. Will you tell me about your husband? What he was like? Tasha smiled, remembering. James was funny. He could find humor in anything. Even when we were broke and stressed, he'd make me laugh. He was also incredibly kind. He'd give someone his last dollar if they needed it more than he did. He sounds like a good man. The best. He loved Bree so much. He used to call her his little sunshine. Every night, he'd read her 3 stories before bed, even when he was exhausted from work. Tasha's voice caught. I miss him every single day. But I'm grateful for the time we had. Not everyone gets to love someone like that. I've never loved anyone like that, Richard said quietly. Never let myself. It's not too late, Tasha insisted. You're still here. You still have time. Do I? Richard's eyes searched hers. The doctors say my heart is barely functioning. The pneumonia has damaged my lungs. Even if I survive this, I'll never be the same. Maybe that's a good thing, Tasha suggested. Maybe the old Richard needed to change. This could be your second chance. Richard's eyes drifted closed. His breathing, though still labored, had a more peaceful quality. His hand, still holding Tasha's, relaxed slightly. Tasha settled deeper into her chair, prepared for a long night. Through the window, she could see the city lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping, living their lives, unaware that in this hospital room, something important was happening. A man who had spent his life alone was learning that connection mattered. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. That sometimes the wrong number was exactly the right call. Dawn crept through the hospital room windows, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. Tasha had dozed off twice during the night, jerking awake each time Richard's breathing changed or one of the machines beeped differently. Patricia had checked on them every hour, each time noting improvements in Richard's condition with surprised approval. Bree stirred on the couch, rubbing her eyes. Mama? What time is it? Almost 6, Tasha said, stretching her stiff neck. Her back ached from the uncomfortable chair, but she didn't care. Richard was still sleeping, his breathing easier than it had been when they arrived. Is Mr. Richard better? Bree asked, patting over in her socks. I think so, baby. His color is better and he's resting more peacefully. A new nurse came in, this one a tall man with gentle eyes named Marcus. He checked Richard's vitals, studied the monitors, and nodded with satisfaction. "Dr. Patterson will be pleased," he said. "Mr. Hawthorne's oxygen saturation has improved significantly overnight. His heart rhythm is more stable too." "That's wonderful," Tasha said, relief flooding through her. "Are you family?" Marcus asked, curiosity evident in his voice. "No. Just someone who cares." Marcus smiled. "Sometimes that's even better. I'll let the doctor know you're here. She'll want to examine him when he wakes up." After Marcus left, Bree opened her backpack and pulled out a package of crackers. "I brought snacks. Want some, Mama?" They shared the crackers quietly, watching Richard sleep. Tasha thought about her own life, about the double shift she was missing, about the bills waiting at home. She should feel anxious, stressed about the lost wages. But somehow, sitting here with this dying stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore, she felt peaceful. This was where she was supposed to be. Richard's eyes opened slowly. He blinked several times, confused, then focused on Tasha. A smile spread across his face. "You're still here. I thought maybe I dreamed you." "We're real," Bree assured him. "And you look better. Your face isn't as gray." Richard chuckled, then coughed. Tasha held water for him again. "Thank you. Both of you. I can't believe you stayed all night." "Where else would we be?" Tasha said simply. A knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in a white coat entered, carrying a tablet. She was middle-aged, with brown hair streaked with gray and intelligent brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne. I'm Dr. Patterson. I've been overseeing your care." She glanced at Tasha and Bree with interest. "And you have visitors, I see." "This is Tasha and Bree Coleman," Richard said. "They saved my life." Dr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Well, we've certainly seen remarkable improvement in your condition overnight. Your vitals are significantly better than they were yesterday. Whatever happened, it's working." She conducted a thorough examination, listening to Richard's heart and lungs, checking his reflexes, asking questions about his pain levels. Throughout it all, she maintained a professional demeanor, but Tasha caught the hope in her eyes. "I have to say, Mr. Hawthorne, 24 hours ago I didn't think you'd make it through the weekend. Your pneumonia was severe, your heart was failing, and frankly, you seem to have given up." Dr. Patterson put her stethoscope away. "But something has changed. Your lungs are responding to the antibiotics now. Your heart rhythm has stabilized. You're engaging with people, which activates different parts of your brain and body." "So he's going to be okay?" Bree asked eagerly. Dr. Patterson smiled at her. "He's not out of danger yet, but his chances are much better than they were. We'll need to keep him here for at least another week, maybe 2. He needs rest, continued treatment, and apparently he needs people around him who care." "We care," Bree said firmly. "We'll stay with him." "Bree, sweetheart, you have school," Tasha reminded her gently. "And I have work." Richard's face fell. "Of course. You have your own lives. I can't ask you to put everything on hold for me." Tasha saw the fear creep back into his eyes, the loneliness that had been there when they first arrived. She made a decision. "I'll figure something out. I can take some time off work. Bree can miss a few days of school." "I can't let you do that," Richard protested. "You said you work at a grocery store. You need that income. I heard what you said about struggling to make rent." "Some things are more important than money," Tasha said firmly. "Then let me help," Richard insisted. "Let me pay you for your time. Not as a transaction, but as a friend helping a friend. You're sacrificing your income to be here. The least I can do is make sure you don't suffer financially for your kindness." Tasha opened her mouth to refuse, then stopped. She remembered her own words from last night, about how accepting help wasn't weakness. How could she tell Richard it was okay to need people if she couldn't accept his help in return? "Okay," she said. "Thank you. That's very generous." Relief flooded Richard's face. "Jeremy, my assistant, will arrange everything. Just tell him what you need." Dr. Patterson watched this exchange with an approving smile. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'm going to write up new orders for your care plan. I want you walking the halls twice a day, eating regular meals, and continuing your medications. But most importantly, I want you to have visitors. Having people around you is clearly helping your recovery." After the doctor left, Patricia returned with breakfast trays. "I brought extra," she said with a wink. "Figured your guests might be hungry." They ate together, Richard managing to finish half his oatmeal and some fruit. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd eaten in days according to the nurses. "Tell me about school, Bree," Richard said between bites. "What's your favorite subject?" "Reading," Bree answered immediately. "I love stories. My teacher says I read at a 6th grade level. That's impressive. Do you want to be a writer when you grow up? Bree considered this seriously. Maybe. Or maybe a teacher. Or a doctor. Mama says I can be anything I work hard enough to become. Your mama is right, Richard said. And smart. Never let anyone tell you your dreams are too big. Mr. Richard, can I ask you something? Bree's voice was hesitant. Of course. Why don't you have any family here? Everyone has family. Tasha started to intervene, but Richard held up his hand. It's okay. It's a fair question. He turned to Bree. I do have family. A sister named Angela. She lives in Seattle with her husband and 2 kids. But we haven't been close in years. I was always too busy with work to visit. Too focused on my company to remember birthdays or holidays. After a while we just stopped trying. That's sad, Bree said. Family is important. Even when they make you mad or annoy you, they're still family. You're right. I forgot that. Or maybe I never really understood it. Richard's voice grew thoughtful. My parents used me as a weapon against each other. Family wasn't a safe place for me growing up. So I decided I didn't need family at all. I was wrong. You could fix it, Bree suggested. You could call your sister and say sorry. Would she even want to hear from me after all these years? Only one way to find out, Tasha said. But maybe give yourself a few days to get stronger first. Focus on healing. The rest can come later. Jeremy arrived around 10, looking more rested than he had the night before. He carried a briefcase and a garment bag. Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne. I brought fresh clothes and the documents you requested. He nodded politely to Tasha and Bree. I also made the arrangements you texted me about this morning. Thank you, Jeremy. Before you go, I want to ask you something. How long have you worked for me? Jeremy looked surprised by the question. 3 years next month, sir. And in those 3 years, I've never once asked about your personal life. That changes now. Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have family? Jeremy's confusion was evident. I'm engaged, sir. To my girlfriend Lauren. We're getting married next June. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Tell me about her. For the next 20 minutes, Jeremy talked about Lauren, about their relationship, their wedding plans, their hopes for the future. Richard listened attentively, asking questions, showing genuine interest. Tasha watched this interaction with satisfaction. He was learning. Slowly but learning. After Jeremy left, Richard turned to Tasha. That felt good. Seeing him as a person instead of just an employee. I've wasted so much time. You haven't wasted it, Tasha corrected. You've just spent it differently. Now you get to make new choices. The morning passed in quiet conversation. Richard dozed on and off. Bree drew pictures at the small table by the window. Tasha answered work emails on her phone, letting her manager know she needed a few days off for a family emergency. Around noon, Patricia returned. Time for your walk, Mr. Hawthorne? Doctor's orders. Richard looked uncertain. I don't know if I can. You can, Tasha said firmly. We'll help you. With Patricia on one side and Tasha on the other, they got Richard out of bed. He was unsteady on his feet, weak from days of lying down. But step by step they made it out of the room and down the hall. Bree walked ahead of them, turning back frequently to offer encouragement. You're doing great, Mr. Richard. Just a little farther. They made it to the nurse's station and back, a small distance but a huge accomplishment. By the time they got Richard back into bed, he was exhausted but smiling. I did it, he said wonderingly. I actually did it. Of course you did, Tasha said. You're stronger than you think. As Richard fell asleep again, Bree climbed into the chair beside Tasha. Mama, I'm glad we came here. Mr. Richard needs us. I'm glad too, baby. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is just show up for someone. Tasha looked out the window at the city below, thinking about how one phone call had changed everything. How saying yes to a stranger's desperate plea had led them here, to this moment, to this unexpected connection. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew, deep in her heart, that they were exactly where they needed to be. That afternoon, Tasha called her neighbor Mrs. Washington to explain the situation. The older woman, who had known the Colemans since they moved into the building, immediately offered to water Tasha's plants and collect their mail. You're doing a good thing, honey, Mrs. Washington said warmly. The Lord put that man in your path for a reason. You follow where your heart leads. By evening, Richard was more alert. The nurses encouraged him to sit up in a chair for dinner instead of eating in bed. Tasha helped him make the short journey from bed to chair, noticing how he gripped her arm for support. I used to run marathons, Richard said with a rueful laugh. 10 years ago I ran the Boston Marathon. Now I can barely walk across a room. You'll get stronger, Tasha assured him. It takes time. Dinner arrived, and this time Richard managed to eat most of his meal. Bree entertained them with stories from school, describing her classmates with vivid detail. There's this boy named Tyler who thinks he's so cool because he can burp the alphabet. But everybody knows that's gross, not cool. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Boys are weird. Richard laughed, a genuine sound that made Tasha's heart lift. I was probably like Tyler when I was your age. Always trying to impress people. Did it work? Bree asked. Not really. I was a small kid, kind of nerdy. I liked computers and math, which wasn't cool in the 80s. I got picked on a lot. That's mean, Bree said indignantly. People shouldn't be mean just because someone is different. You're absolutely right. But unfortunately it happens. Richard's expression grew distant. I think that's partly why I became so focused on success. I wanted to prove I was worth something. I wanted to show everyone who made fun of me that I could be important. But you already were important, Bree said. Everyone is important just for being themselves. Tasha felt a surge of pride in her daughter. At 8 years old, Bree understood things that many adults never grasped. I wish someone had told me that when I was your age, Richard said quietly. It might have changed everything. As night fell, Bree settled on the couch with her homework. Tasha had called the school and explained the situation, and Bree's teacher had emailed assignments. Bree worked diligently, occasionally asking Richard for help with her math problems. What's 7 times 8? She asked, chewing on her pencil. 56, Richard answered immediately. Math was always my best subject. Mine too, Bree said. Well, math and reading. I'm not so good at social studies. All those dates and names get confusing. History is just stories, Richard said. If you think of it that way, it's easier to remember. Every date represents something that happened to real people. They worked through her homework together, Richard explaining concepts in ways that made sense to an 8-year-old. Tasha watched, seeing a different side of this man. He was patient with Bree, never condescending, treating her questions seriously. After Bree finished her homework and settled down with her book, Richard turned to Tasha. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. How did you stay strong after your husband died? How did you keep going when everything fell apart? Tasha thought carefully before answering. Honestly, some days I didn't feel strong at all. There were mornings I couldn't get out of bed. Times I cried in the grocery store bathroom during my lunch break. Nights I lay awake wondering how I'd survive. But you did survive. Because I had to. Bree needed me. And because I had people who helped me. My neighbor brought food. My coworker covered shifts. People from church babysat Bree when I had to work late. Tasha's voice softened. I learned that you don't have to be strong alone. Letting people help you, that's a kind of strength too. Richard was quiet for a long moment. I've always thought asking for help was weakness. In business, showing vulnerability is dangerous. People take advantage of it. Business isn't life, Tasha said gently. Real relationships, real connections, they're built on trust and vulnerability. If you never let people see your struggles, they can never really know you. But what if they hurt you? What if you trust someone and they let you down? Then they do. It hurts, but you survive. The alternative is going through life alone, never letting anyone in. That's not living. That's just existing. Richard's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I've been just existing for so long. I forgot what living felt like. You're remembering now, Tasha said. That's what matters. Patricia came in for the night shift change. She checked Richard's vitals and smiled with approval. Temperature is down. Blood pressure is better. Heart rate is stable. Whatever you're doing, Mr. Hawthorne, keep it up. After she left, Richard asked, tell me more about James. I want to understand what real love looks like. So Tasha told him. About how she and James met in a college library, both reaching for the same book. About their first date at a cheap diner where they talked for 6 hours. About the tiny apartment they shared after graduation, furnished with hand-me-downs and yard sale finds. We didn't have money, Tasha said. But we had each other. We'd make dinner together every night, even when we were exhausted. We'd take walks in the park because it was free. We'd stay up late talking about our dreams. What were your dreams? Richard asked. Nothing grand. We wanted a house someday with a yard for kids to play in. We wanted to travel, see the ocean, take Bree to Disney World. Simple things that felt huge to us. Tasha smiled sadly. We were saving for a trip to the beach when he died. We'd never seen the ocean. He never got to. I'm so sorry, Richard said. Me too. But I'm also grateful. Some people never get to experience that kind of love. At least I had it, even if it was too brief. Richard wiped his eyes. I've had relationships. Affairs, really. Women I dated for a few months before work got in the way. But I never let any of them get close. Never let myself be vulnerable enough to really love someone. It's not too late, Tasha said, repeating words that were becoming a refrain. You're 52, Richard. You could have 30 or 40 more years. That's time for love, for family, for connection. If you want it. I do want it, Richard said fiercely. I want it so much. But I don't know how. I don't know how to be the kind of person people want to be around. You're doing it right now, Tasha pointed out. You're being honest. You're being vulnerable. You're asking questions and really listening to the answers. That's all it takes. Is it really that simple? The mechanics are simple. Following through consistently, that's harder. But you can do it. I believe in you. Richard's hand found hers again. Why? Why do you believe in me? You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're scared of dying alone. I know you recognize that your life hasn't been what you wanted. I know you're trying to change. That's enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to Bree's soft breathing as she slept on the couch. The hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm, quieter but never truly silent. Machines beeped, footsteps echoed in hallways, distant voices murmured. Tell me about your childhood, Richard said eventually. Before your parents divorced. So Richard told her. About growing up in Boston, in a big house with a pool and every material thing he could want. About parents who were never home, always traveling for business. About nannies who changed every few months. About learning early that love was conditional, based on achievements and obedience. When I brought home straight A's, my father would nod and say, good. Keep it up. When I won the science fair, my mother said, of course you did. You're a Hawthorne. Nothing was ever enough. I was never enough, just as myself. That must have been lonely, Tasha said. I didn't realize how lonely until much later. I thought that was just how life was. You perform, you achieve, you prove your worth. The idea that someone could love you just for existing, no strings attached, that wasn't part of my world. That's heartbreaking, Tasha said. Every child deserves to be loved unconditionally. I know that now. But back then I internalized it. I became what they wanted. The perfect son. Excellent grades, prestigious college, successful career. I built Hawthorne Industries from nothing and grew it into an empire. And the whole time I was empty inside. Richard's voice broke. Do you know what the worst part is? I did the same thing to the people in my life. I treated relationships like business transactions. If someone couldn't benefit me professionally, I had no time for them. I became exactly like my parents. But you recognize that now, Tasha said. That's the first step to changing. What if it's too late? What if I've burned too many bridges? Some bridges might be burned. But you can build new ones. And maybe some of the old bridges can be repaired. You won't know until you try. Richard nodded slowly, exhaustion evident in his face. I'm tired. Not just physically. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of working all the time. I'm tired of having everything and feeling like I have nothing. Then rest, Tasha said gently. Rest and heal. And when you're stronger, we'll figure out the next steps together. You do that? Help me figure out how to be a better person. Of course. That's what friends do. Friends? Richard repeated wonderingly. I don't think I've had a real friend since college. Maybe not even then. You have 2 friends now, Tasha said, nodding toward Bree. We're not going anywhere. Richard's eyes filled with tears again, but this time he didn't try to hide them. Thank you. For seeing something in me worth saving. For not giving up when any reasonable person would have hung up the phone. You're worth saving, Richard. You just forgot that for a while. We're helping you remember. As Richard drifted off to sleep, Tasha settled back in her chair. Her body ached from 2 nights in uncomfortable chairs, but her heart felt full. Something important was happening here. A life was being saved, but more than that, a soul was being healed. She thought about the phone call 2 nights ago, how close she'd come to ignoring the unknown number. How different everything would be if she had. Richard would have died alone. Bree would never have met this kind, broken man. And Tasha would have missed the chance to make a real difference in someone's life. Sometimes, she thought, the most important moments come disguised as inconveniences. A late-night phone call from a stranger. A request that seems unreasonable. A choice to say yes when saying no would be easier. She looked at Richard sleeping peacefully, his face more relaxed than when they'd first arrived. She looked at Bree curled up on the couch, her library book open on her chest. And she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Morning light filled the hospital room, bright and clear. Tasha woke to find Patricia checking Richard's vitals again, a pleased expression on her face. "His temperature is normal," Patricia said quietly, careful not to wake Bree. "Lungs sound clearer. Heart rhythm is excellent. Dr. Patterson is going to be very happy with these results." Richard stirred, opening his eyes slowly. He looked around the room, his gaze landing on Tasha and Bree. A smile spread across his face, genuine and warm. "Good morning," he said, his voice stronger than it had been yesterday. "You're both still here. Where else would we be?" Bree asked, sitting up and stretching. "We're your friends. Friends don't leave." After Patricia finished her checks, breakfast arrived. Richard sat up in bed without help this time, a small victory that made everyone smile. He ate scrambled eggs and toast, finishing almost everything on his plate. "I'm actually hungry," he said with wonder. "I can't remember the last time I felt hungry." "That's a very good sign," Patricia said. "Your body is healing. Keep eating well and following the treatment plan, and you'll be out of here before you know it." Jeremy arrived at 9, carrying Richard's laptop and more paperwork. But before he could launch into business, Richard stopped him. "Jeremy, sit down for a minute. Tell me how the wedding planning is going. Have you and Lauren picked a venue?" Jeremy looked startled but pleased. He sat in the chair by the window and talked about venue shopping, about Lauren's vision for the ceremony, about his own nervous excitement. Richard listened intently, asking questions, offering congratulations. Tasha watched this interaction with satisfaction. Richard was trying. He was making an effort to connect, to see the people around him as humans rather than employees. It wasn't smooth or natural yet, but it was genuine. After Jeremy left, Dr. Patterson arrived for morning rounds. She examined Richard thoroughly, asking questions about his pain levels, his breathing, his energy. "Remarkable," she said, shaking her head. "Mr. Hawthorne, I've been practicing medicine for 25 years, and I've never seen someone bounce back from severe pneumonia and heart failure this quickly. Your lab results are almost normal. Your lung function has improved dramatically. Your heart is beating strong and steady. So I'm going to live?" Richard asked, half joking, half serious. "If you continue at this rate, yes. You'll need to stay here at least another week for monitoring and continued treatment. And you'll need to make significant lifestyle changes after discharge. But barring any setbacks, you should make a full recovery." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was dying. I was so sure this was the end." "You were very sick," Dr. Patterson acknowledged. "But something changed. Having people around you who care, that made all the difference. The mind and body are connected in ways we don't fully understand. When you have reasons to live, your body fights harder." After the doctor left, Richard turned to Tasha. "I need to do something for you both. Something meaningful. Please, let me help you the way you've helped me." "You already offered to cover my lost wages," Tasha reminded him. "That's more than enough." "It's not nearly enough," Richard insisted. "You've given me my life back. Let me do something meaningful for you and Bree." Tasha hesitated. She'd been raised to refuse extravagant gifts, to not be a burden, to make do with what she had. But she remembered telling Richard about accepting help. How could she expect him to learn if she didn't model it? "Okay," she said slowly. "There are things we need. Practical things." "Tell me." "My car is old. It breaks down constantly and I can't afford repairs. Every time something goes wrong, I have to choose between fixing the car or buying groceries." Tasha took a breath. "And Bree needs a computer for school. All her classmates have them for online assignments, but we can't afford one. She has to use the library computers, which limits when she can do homework." "Done," Richard said immediately. "Jeremy will arrange everything. A reliable car, a good computer, whatever else you need." "Richard, that's too much," Tasha protested weakly. "It's not enough. It's barely anything." Richard's voice was firm. "Please let me do this. You've given me something priceless. Let me give you something practical in return." Tasha felt tears prick her eyes. Pride warred with practicality, but practicality won. "Thank you. This will make such a difference for us." "No, thank you. For everything." Bree, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Mr. Richard, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "When you get better and leave the hospital, will we still be friends?" Richard's face softened. "Absolutely. I'd like that very much." "Good. Because you need friends. And Mama and I are really good at being friends." The morning passed in comfortable companionship. Bree worked on her homework while Richard offered help and encouragement. Tasha made phone calls, arranging for Mrs. Washington to keep checking on their apartment, updating Bree's teacher on their situation. Around lunchtime, Patricia returned with a wheelchair. "Time for your walk, Mr. Hawthorne. But today we're going farther. Down to the atrium on the first floor. There's sunshine and plants and I think it would do you good." With Tasha and Patricia's help, Richard moved from the bed to the wheelchair. He looked frustrated by his weakness but didn't complain. They made their way through the halls, Bree walking ahead and describing everything she saw. The atrium was beautiful, filled with natural light streaming through tall windows. Plants in large pots created a small garden. A fountain burbled in the center. Several other patients sat in wheelchairs or on benches, enjoying the change of scenery. They found a spot by the fountain. Richard closed his eyes, tilting his face toward the sun. "I can't remember the last time I felt sunlight," he said. "My office has windows but I never open the blinds. Too much glare on the computer screen." "The sun is important," Bree said sagely. "It gives us vitamin D. We learned that in science class." They sat there for 30 minutes, soaking in the warmth and light. Other patients smiled and nodded at them. An elderly woman in a wheelchair stopped to admire Bree's colorful jacket. "What a beautiful child," she said to Tasha. "And so well behaved. My grandchildren would be running around like wild animals." "Thank you," Tasha said, pride evident in her voice. "She's my greatest blessing." On the way back to the room, they passed a small waiting area where a young woman sat crying quietly. She looked to be in her mid-20s, her face blotchy and red. Richard noticed her distress. "Excuse me," he called out. "Are you all right?" The young woman looked up, startled. "I'm fine. Thank you." "You don't look fine," Richard said gently. "I don't mean to intrude, but sometimes it helps to talk." The woman hesitated, then the words spilled out. "My father just had emergency surgery. He's in recovery now, but it was close. The doctors say he'll be okay, but I was so scared." She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't dump this on strangers." "Sometimes strangers are the easiest people to talk to," Richard said. "I'm Richard. This is Tasha and Bree. I'm a patient here too. Pneumonia and heart problems." "I'm Nicole," the young woman said. "I'm sorry you're sick. Are you getting better?" "Thanks to these two, yes. They showed up when I needed someone most. They reminded me that people still care about each other." Nicole managed a watery smile. "That's beautiful. Your family sounds wonderful." "They're not my family," Richard said. "They're my friends, which might be even better." Nicole stood up, composing herself. "Thank you for stopping. It helped to talk even for a minute. I hope you recover fully, Mr. Richard." "I hope your father recovers too," Richard said warmly. As they continued back to the room, Bree looked up at Richard with shining eyes. "That was nice what you did. Making her feel better." "You and your mother taught me that," Richard said. "Showing up for people. Caring about their struggles. It makes a difference." Back in the room, Richard was exhausted from the excursion but happy. His color was better, his breathing easier. He settled into bed and fell asleep almost immediately. Tasha and Bree ate lunch in the small cafeteria, giving Richard time to rest alone. Over sandwiches and fruit, Bree asked, "Mama, do you think Mr. Richard will really stay friends with us after he gets better?" "I think so, baby." "Why?" "Because I like him. He's sad and lonely, but he's trying to be better." "That's brave." "It is brave," Tasha agreed. "Changing yourself, admitting you've been wrong, that takes real courage. Mr. Richard has that courage." "I'm glad we came to the hospital," Bree said. "Even though it's boring sometimes and the chairs are uncomfortable. We're helping someone. That's important." Tasha hugged her daughter, overwhelmed with love. "You have the biggest heart, Bree Coleman. Don't ever lose that." When they returned to the room, Jeremy was there with another man in an expensive suit. They were discussing business matters with Richard, who looked overwhelmed and tired. "Gentlemen," Tasha said firmly, "I think that's enough for today. Mr. Hawthorne needs rest." The other man looked annoyed. "We have important decisions to make. The board meeting is next week and—" "The board meeting will happen with or without Richard," Tasha interrupted. "Right now, his health is more important than any business decision. You can come back tomorrow." Richard looked grateful. "Tasha's right. We'll continue this tomorrow. Thank you both for coming." After the men left, Richard said, "You just dismissed a room full of people who probably bill $500 an hour." "I don't care if they bill $5,000 an hour," Tasha said. "You're still recovering. You need rest, not stress. Thank you for looking out for me, Richard said quietly. No one has done that in a very long time. As evening fell, they settled into their routine. Bree did homework while Richard helped. Tasha checked emails and texts, staying in touch with her job and making sure everything was okay at home. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, administering medications, offering encouragement. At dinner time, Patricia brought meals for all three of them. Hospital policy doesn't usually allow this, she said with a wink. But Dr. Patterson approved it. She says your presence is part of Mr. Hawthorne's treatment plan. They ate together, talking about everything and nothing. Richard told stories about building his company, about the early days when success wasn't guaranteed. Bree talked about her favorite books and her dream of writing her own stories someday. Tasha shared memories of James, happy memories that made them all smile. He sounds like he was a wonderful man, Richard said. I wish I could have met him. He would have liked you, Tasha said. James believed everyone deserved a second chance. He would have been proud of what you're doing, trying to change your life. As they cleared away the dinner trays, Richard said, I want to call my sister. Will you stay while I do it? I might need moral support. Of course, Tasha said. Richard picked up his phone with trembling hands. He found Angela's number and hit call. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello? Angela? It's Richard. A long pause. Richard? Why are you calling? I'm in the hospital. I've been very sick. Pneumonia and heart problems. Richard's voice shook. I almost died, Angela. And when I was lying here thinking about my life, I realized how much I regret pushing you away. Another pause. When Angela spoke again, her voice was softer. Are you okay now? I'm getting better. Thanks to some very special people who showed me that it's not too late to change. Richard glanced at Tasha and Bree. I know I have no right to ask this, but I'd like a chance to be your brother again. Really be your brother, not just someone you share DNA with. Tasha heard Angela's voice crack. I'd like that too. I've missed you, Richard. Even when I was angry, I missed you. They talked for 20 minutes, carefully navigating years of distance and hurt. Angela shared photos of her kids over video call. Richard promised to visit once he was recovered. When they finally hung up, Richard was crying, but they were happy tears. I did it, he said wonderingly. I actually did it. You did, Tasha confirmed. I'm so proud of you. As night settled over the hospital, Richard fell into a peaceful sleep. Tasha and Bree settled into their usual spots, comfortable in this routine they developed. Through the window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Tasha thought about small acts of kindness, about how they could ripple outward in unexpected ways. Answering a phone call, staying with a stranger, offering comfort and hope. Such simple things, but they were changing a life. Maybe she thought they were changing her life too. Reminding her that she was strong, capable, and able to make a real difference. That her compassion wasn't weakness but power. She fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, grateful for wrong numbers and second chances. The next few days fell into a comfortable rhythm. Richard's health continued to improve, his strength returning gradually. He walked the halls twice a day now, needing less support each time. His appetite returned fully, and he complained good-naturedly about the bland hospital food. I'd give anything for a real burger, he said one afternoon. With bacon and cheese and all the fixings. Soon, Tasha promised. Once you're out of here, we'll get you the biggest burger in the city. Bree had become a fixture in the hospital ward. The nurses knew her by name, greeting her cheerfully when she arrived each morning. Other patients looked forward to her visits, her cheerful energy brightening the sterile environment. One morning, Bree asked Richard about his company. What exactly does Hawthorne Industries do? We manufacture components for electronics, Richard explained. Computer chips, circuit boards, things like that. We supply parts to companies that make phones, laptops, tablets. So you help make the stuff that makes other stuff work? Bree asked. Exactly. We're behind the scenes but essential. That's cool. Do you like it? Richard considered this. I used to. Or I thought I did. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about creating something useful and started being about making more money, beating competitors, growing bigger. The joy got lost. Maybe you can find it again, Bree suggested. When you're better. Maybe I can, Richard agreed. That afternoon Jeremy arrived with a surprise. Mr. Hawthorne, I took the liberty of bringing your sketchbook. I found it in your desk drawer. I thought maybe you'd want it. Richard's eyes widened. I forgot about that. Thank you, Jeremy. After Jeremy left, Tasha asked, You draw? I used to. Back in college. I loved it. Richard opened the sketchbook, revealing page after page of detailed drawings. Landscapes, buildings, people. I gave it up when I started the company. Told myself I didn't have time for hobbies. These are beautiful, Tasha said, examining the sketches. You're really talented. I was rusty back when I made these. I'd be even worse now. Or maybe you'd be better, Bree said. Maybe you just need to practice. So Richard started drawing again. Slowly at first, his hand uncertain but gradually finding the old rhythm. He sketched the view from his window, the fountain in the atrium, the nurses who cared for him. And he sketched Tasha and Bree, capturing Tasha's kind eyes and gentle smile, Bree's bright energy and innocent joy. These are for you, he said, tearing the pages carefully from the book. Something to remember this time. We could never forget, Tasha said, her eyes misty. But thank you. These are precious. One evening, Richard's assistant Jeremy came with unexpected news. Sir, the board wants to hold an emergency meeting. They're concerned about your extended absence and want to discuss interim leadership. Richard's face tightened. Let them meet. I trust the leadership team to handle things. But sir, this is your company. Don't you want to be involved? Jeremy, I've been lying here for a week and the company hasn't collapsed. That tells me something important. Either I hired good people who can function without me, or I was never as essential as I thought. Richard leaned back against his pillows. Either way, it's a lesson I needed to learn. After Jeremy left, looking confused and concerned, Tasha said, that must be hard. Realizing the company doesn't need you the way you thought it did. It is hard, Richard admitted. My whole identity was wrapped up in being the CEO, being essential, being indispensable. But it's also freeing. If the company can run without me, then maybe I can have a life outside of work. What would that life look like? Tasha asked. Richard thought carefully. I want to reconnect with Angela and her family. Get to know my niece and nephew. Maybe travel, see places I've read about but never visited. Draw more. And I want to do something meaningful with my money. Not just accumulate it but use it to help people. That sounds like a good life, Bree said approvingly. Dr. Patterson came by that evening with excellent news. Mr. Hawthorne, your latest test results are outstanding. Your lungs are almost completely clear. Your heart function is back to normal. I think we can discharge you in 2 or 3 days. Richard looked panicked. 2 or 3 days. But I'm not ready. You're more than ready medically speaking, Dr. Patterson said with a knowing smile. But I understand. You've built a support system here. The question is, can you maintain that support system outside the hospital? After the doctor left, Richard turned to Tasha with worried eyes. What if I go back to my old life? What if without you here every day, I slip back into bad habits? You won't, Tasha said firmly. Because you're different now. You've changed, Richard. That doesn't go away just because you leave the hospital. But what if I get lonely again? What if the emptiness comes back? Then you call us, Tasha said simply. You reach out. You remember that you're not alone anymore. You have people who care about you. Will you really stay in touch? Richard asked, his vulnerability showing. After all this is over, when you go back to your normal life? Of course we will, Bree said indignantly. We're friends. Friends don't just disappear. That night, unable to sleep, Richard and Tasha talked late into the night. Bree had fallen asleep on the couch, her soft snores a comforting background noise. Tell me about your hopes for the future, Richard said. What do you want for yourself and Bree? Tasha smiled. I want Bree to have opportunities one never had. I want her to go to college, to pursue her dreams without being held back by money. I want her to see the world, to experience different cultures, to become whoever she's meant to be. And for yourself? Honestly, I just want stability. A job that pays enough so I'm not constantly worried about bills. A safe place to live. Maybe someday I'd like to go back to school myself. I always wanted to be a social worker, to help families like mine. You'd be excellent at that, Richard said. You have such compassion and wisdom. You see people clearly and accept them as they are. Thank you. That means a lot. I want to help make your dreams happen, Richard said seriously. I want to pay for Bree's college education. I want to help you go back to school. And I want to hire you if you're willing. Tasha's eyes widened. Hire me? For what? I'm going to start a foundation. Something focused on helping single parents, families struggling to make ends meet. People who just need a little support to get back on their feet. I want you to run it. Richard, I'm not qualified for something like that. You're more qualified than anyone I know. You've lived it. You understand what people need because you've needed it yourself. Richard's voice grew passionate. I don't want some fancy MBA running this foundation. I want someone with heart, someone who genuinely cares. That's you. Tasha felt tears slide down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say yes, please. Let me do this meaningful work, but let me do it the right way with someone who understands at the helm. Yes, Tasha whispered. Yes, I'll do it. They talked late into the night, planning the foundation, discussing how to help people effectively and with dignity. Richard took notes, his excitement palpable. This was different from business meetings about profit margins and market shares. This was about making a real difference. I want to call it the Second Chances Foundation, Richard said. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Including me. That's perfect, Tasha agreed. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Richard said, You saved my life, Tasha. Not just by coming to the hospital, but by showing me what really matters. Family, friendship, connection, purpose. Without you, I would have died empty and alone. Now I have a reason to live. You always had reasons to live, Tasha corrected gently. You just couldn't see them. Sometimes we need someone else to hold up a mirror and show us who we really are, who we can become. Then you're my mirror, Richard said. You and Bree both. You showed me the man I want to be. The next morning, Richard walked the hospital halls without any assistance. His steps were steady, his breathing easy. Nurses and other staff members who had watched his remarkable recovery applauded as he passed. This is incredible, Patricia said, checking his vitals one more time. In 20 years of nursing, I've never seen anything like this. You were literally on death's door a week ago. Now look at you. I had help, Richard said, smiling at Tasha and Bree. The best help possible. That afternoon, Angela called. Richard, I talked to Mark and the kids. We want to come visit you. This weekend, if that's okay. The kids are excited to meet their uncle. Richard's face lit up with joy. That would be amazing. I'd love to see you all. After the call, he turned to Tasha. My family is coming. I'm going to see my sister and meet my niece and nephew for the first time. How did this happen? How did my life change so completely in just 1 week? One phone call, Tasha said. One moment of vulnerability. One choice to reach out instead of giving up. That's all it took. And one person kind enough to answer, Richard added. One person who cared about a stranger. As discharge day approached, Jeremy arrived with papers for Richard to sign. He also brought news about the car and computer. Everything is arranged, Jeremy said. The car will be delivered tomorrow. It's a Honda CR-V, reliable and safe. The computer is a high-end laptop, perfect for school work. Both will be in your name, Miss Coleman. Tasha felt overwhelmed. This is too much. It's not nearly enough, Richard said firmly. Please let me do this. It brings me joy to help you. So Tasha accepted with gratitude, recognizing that letting Richard give to her was part of his healing process. He needed to feel useful, to make a positive difference in someone's life. That final night in the hospital, Richard barely slept. Not from fear or pain, but from excitement. He was being released tomorrow, starting a new chapter of his life. He had plans, goals, connections. He had people who cared about him and people he cared about in return. Lying in the dark, listening to the familiar hospital sounds, he thought about the phone call that had changed everything. How close he'd come to dying alone and forgotten. How one woman's kindness had given him a second chance at life. He silently vowed to make the most of that chance. To honor Tasha and Bree's gift by becoming the man they believed he could be. To use his resources and influence to help others the way they had helped him. As dawn broke on his last morning in the hospital, Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Richard's discharge day arrived with sunshine streaming through the hospital windows. He dressed in the clean clothes Jeremy had brought, looking more like himself but somehow different too. His eyes held warmth they hadn't had before. His smile came more easily. Dr. Patterson came for a final examination. She listened to his heart and lungs, checked his reflexes, reviewed his medication list. You're officially cleared for discharge, she said. But I want you to take it easy for the next few weeks. No returning to full-time work immediately. No stress. Continue taking your medications. Come back for follow-up appointments. I will, Richard promised. Thank you for everything, Dr. Patterson. You saved my life. I treated your body, Dr. Patterson said, glancing at Tasha and Bree. But they saved your life. Never forget that. The nurses gathered to say goodbye, each hugging Richard and wishing him well. Patricia had tears in her eyes. You were one of my favorite patients, she said. Not because you were easy but because you were real. You let yourself be vulnerable and you changed because of it. That takes courage. Jeremy arrived with a wheelchair, hospital policy for discharge. Richard sat reluctantly, still weak from his ordeal despite his improvements. I feel silly, he muttered. Hospital rules, Jeremy said cheerfully. At least enjoy being pushed around for once instead of doing all the pushing yourself. They took the elevator down to the main entrance. Richard's car waited outside, a sleek black sedan with a driver. Next to it sat a brand new Honda CR-V in deep blue, keys in Tasha's hand courtesy of Jeremy's arrangements. Richard stared at both vehicles then said, "Send my car away. I'm riding with Tasha and Bree." Jeremy looked surprised. "Sir, you just got out of the hospital. Wouldn't you be more comfortable?" "I'm riding with my friends," Richard said firmly. "Have the driver follow us to my house with my belongings." So Tasha drove, with Richard in the passenger seat and Bree in the back. The new car handled beautifully, smooth and quiet. Tasha felt tears of gratitude prick her eyes. This car meant reliable transportation to work, safe travel for Bree, no more breakdowns and expensive repairs. "Thank you," she said softly to Richard. "This is life-changing." "Good," Richard said, smiling. "That's exactly what I wanted it to be." They drove to Richard's house, a massive modern structure in an exclusive neighborhood. All glass and steel and clean lines, it looked more like a museum than a home. Inside, everything was pristine and cold, professionally decorated but lacking any warmth or personality. "It's so big," Bree said, her voice echoing in the vast entryway. "Too big for one person," Richard admitted, looking around with new eyes. "I bought it to impress people, I think. To show how successful I was. But I've never felt at home here." Jeremy helped Richard settle into the living room while Tasha explored. The kitchen was state-of-the-art but barely used. The home office was cluttered with paperwork and computer equipment. The bedrooms were sparse and impersonal. The whole place felt empty despite being filled with expensive furniture and artwork. "You need some color in here," Bree announced. "And pictures. Home should have pictures of people you love." "I don't have any pictures," Richard said quietly. "I never took any. I was never anywhere I wanted to remember." "Then we'll make new memories," Tasha said. "Starting now." She pulled out her phone and took a photo of Richard, Bree and herself, all three of them smiling on Richard's enormous white couch. "There. Your first family photo." Richard stared at the image, his eyes filling with tears. "Family photo," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." Over the next few days, Richard adjusted to being home. Tasha and Bree visited daily, bringing warmth and life to the cold house. Bree drew pictures that Richard hung on his refrigerator. Tasha helped him sort through years of accumulated paperwork, organizing his life. They cooked meals together in his underused kitchen. Simple things like spaghetti and salad, but prepared with laughter and conversation. Richard was a terrible cook, but he tried hard, following Tasha's instructions with endearing concentration. "I've had private chefs prepare gourmet meals for me," Richard said one evening, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "But nothing has ever tasted as good as this." "That's because you made it yourself," Bree said wisely. "Food tastes better when you make it with people you love." The doorbell rang one Saturday afternoon. Richard answered to find Angela standing there with her husband Mark and two children. Angela looked like Richard, the same eyes and strong chin, but her face was softer, more open. "Richard," she said, and then they were hugging, both crying. "I'm sorry," Richard said into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry for all the years I wasted, for being a terrible brother." "I'm sorry too," Angela said. "I could have tried harder to reach you." They spent the afternoon getting reacquainted. Angela's kids, Emily and Noah, were 7 and 9. Initially shy, they warmed up quickly when Bree pulled out her art supplies and suggested they make welcome cards for their uncle. Tasha stayed in the background, giving the family space to reconnect. But Angela sought her out in the kitchen. "Thank you," Angela said simply. "Jeremy told me what you did. How you came to the hospital when Richard called you, how you stayed with him. You gave me my brother back." "He gave himself back," Tasha corrected. "He did the hard work of changing. I just provided support." "That support saved his life," Angela insisted. "I'll never forget that. If there's ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, please ask." "Just love your brother," Tasha said. "Be there for him. That's all he needs." Watching Richard play with his niece and nephew, seeing the joy on his face as Emily showed him her drawings and Noah explained his favorite video games, Tasha felt profound satisfaction. This was why she'd answered that phone call. For this moment, this reconnection, this healing. That evening, after Angela's family left with promises to visit again soon, Richard said, "I haven't been that happy in decades. Maybe ever." "You're building the life you always needed," Tasha said. "Family, connection, purpose. It's all coming together." Over the following weeks, Richard threw himself into planning the Second Chances Foundation. He met with lawyers to establish the organization properly. He consulted with social workers to understand the needs of struggling families. He talked to single parents, listening to their stories, learning what kind of help would make the biggest difference. Tasha worked alongside him, using her own experiences to shape the foundation's mission. They decided to focus on providing emergency funds for unexpected expenses, helping with job training and education, offering counseling services, and creating a community where families could support each other. "I want it to be different from typical charities," Richard said during one planning session. "I don't want people to feel like they're begging. I want them to feel valued and respected. Like we're partnering with them, not saving them." "Exactly," Tasha agreed. "Poverty isn't a moral failing. People just need opportunities and support to get back on their feet." They hired staff, people with backgrounds in social work and community organizing. They found office space in a working-class neighborhood, deliberately choosing a location that was accessible to the people they wanted to serve. They planned programs and outreach efforts. Through it all, Richard attended his follow-up appointments, took his medications and continued to recover. His doctors were amazed by his progress. Not just physically but mentally and emotionally. He seemed like a different person. One afternoon, Richard's former assistant Jeremy came to the foundation office. He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Hawthorne, can we talk privately?" In Richard's office, Jeremy said, "Sir, the board is concerned. You've been away from the company for almost a month now. They want to know when you're coming back." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Tell them I'm not coming back. Not full-time anyway. I'll remain on the board as chairman, but I'm stepping down as CEO." Jeremy's mouth fell open. "But sir, Hawthorne Industries is your life." "No," Richard corrected gently. "It was my life. Now I have a real life. One with people I care about and work that matters." He smiled. "I'm not abandoning the company. I'm just putting it in its proper place. It's a business, Jeremy. A successful one that can function with competent leadership. It doesn't need to consume my entire existence." "This is because of them, isn't it?" Jeremy asked, not unkindly. "Tasha and Bree. They changed you." "They did. But I let them. That's the important part. I chose to change. I chose to be better." Richard stood and extended his hand. "I hope you'll stay on as CEO. You've been running things brilliantly in my absence. You care about the company and the employees. You're the right person for the job." Jeremy shook his hand, looking stunned. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. And then go home at a reasonable hour every night. Spend time with Lauren. Plan your wedding. Build a life outside of work. Don't make my mistakes." After Jeremy left, Tasha came into the office. "I'm proud of you. That took courage, stepping back from something that defined you for so long." "It doesn't define me anymore," Richard said. "I'm learning that I'm so much more than my job title or my bank balance. I'm a brother, an uncle, a friend. And soon I'll be someone who runs a foundation that helps people. That's a better legacy than any company." That weekend, Richard invited Tasha, Bree, Angela's family, and several foundation staff members to his house for a gathering. The cold, empty house was transformed with balloons, streamers, and Bree's artwork. They cooked together, filling the kitchen with warmth and laughter. Kids ran through the halls. Adults talked and joked. Music played. Standing in his living room, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about him, Richard felt whole for the first time in his life. Not perfect, not finished healing, but genuinely happy. "Thank you," he said, raising a glass. Everyone quieted. 3 months ago, I was dying alone in a hospital, convinced my life had been a waste. Then I made a phone call. Wrong number, right person. He looked at Tasha and Bree, his eyes bright with tears. "You saved me. Not just my body but my soul. You showed me what matters. You taught me how to live." "You taught yourself," Tasha said. "We just held up the mirror. Then thank you for the mirror. Thank you for your patience and kindness. Thank you for not giving up on me." Richard's voice shook with emotion. "I spent 52 years building walls. You helped me tear them down. I'll spend the rest of my life grateful for that gift." Everyone raised their glasses, cheering and crying. Bree ran to Richard and hugged him tight. "We love you, Mr. Richard," she said simply. "I love you too," Richard said, hugging her back. "Both of you. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone. As the party continued around them, Tasha watched Richard interact with his guests. He listened attentively when people spoke. He laughed easily. He was present and engaged. This wasn't the hollow, desperate man who had called her that night. This was someone reborn, someone who had found his purpose. She thought about how one phone call had changed multiple lives. How saying yes to a stranger's plea had created ripples that kept spreading outward. How kindness and compassion could literally save a life and transform a soul. What would you do if a stranger called you in their darkest hour? Would you have the courage to say yes to someone else's pain? These are the moments that define us. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been that stranger who needed help or the person who answered the call? The Second Chances Foundation officially opened 2 months after Richard's discharge from the hospital. They held a modest ribbon-cutting ceremony, just staff and a few local community members. No press, no fanfare. Richard wanted the focus to be on the work, not on him. The foundation office was warm and welcoming. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, children's play area in the corner. Everything designed to make people feel safe and respected, not judged or desperate. Tasha had hired a small but dedicated staff. Angela volunteered to help with administrative work. Even Jeremy came by regularly, offering business expertise and helping with financial planning. Their first client was a woman named Teresa, 34 years old with 3 kids. Her car had broken down and she couldn't afford repairs. Without transportation, she would lose her job at the nursing home where she worked night shifts. Tasha met with Teresa in a private office, listening to her story without judgment. Teresa cried as she explained her situation, ashamed of needing help. "There's no shame in needing support," Tasha said gently. "Life throws challenges at all of us. The only difference is some people have resources and safety nets. Others don't. That's not your fault." The foundation paid for Teresa's car repairs and provided 3 months of assistance with her car insurance. They also connected her with a financial counselor to help her build savings and plan for future emergencies. "I don't know how to thank you," Teresa said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my family." "Pay it forward," Tasha said. "Someday when you're able, help someone else. That's all the thanks we need." Word spread quickly through the community. More people came, each with their own story. Single mothers struggling with childcare costs. Families facing eviction after unexpected medical bills. People who needed job training or education but couldn't afford it. The foundation helped them all. Not with judgment or conditions, but with dignity and respect. They provided emergency funds, connected people with resources, offered counseling and support. Richard was there every day, meeting clients, listening to stories, understanding the real impact of poverty and struggle. It broke his heart and filled it at the same time. "I had no idea," he said to Tasha one evening after a particularly difficult day. "I knew poverty existed intellectually, but I didn't understand it. Not really. The stress, the impossible choices, the constant fear. How do people survive it?" "The same way I did," Tasha said. "One day at a time. With help from good people and a lot of hope." Richard threw himself into the foundation work with the same intensity he'd once brought to his business. But this felt different. Every person helped, every family stabilized. It mattered in a way profit margins never had. He also maintained his relationships. Weekly dinners with Angela's family became routine. He attended Emily and Noah's school events, cheering from the audience like any proud uncle. He called his sister regularly just to talk, to stay connected. And he saw Tasha and Bree almost daily. They'd become such an important part of his life that he couldn't imagine his days without them. Bree did her homework at the foundation office after school. Tasha and Richard strategized about programs and outreach. They felt like family. One Saturday, Richard suggested a trip. "Let's go to the beach. Tasha, you said you and James never made it to the ocean. Let's go." They drove 2 hours to the coast, the new CRV handling the highway perfectly. Bree chattered excitedly the whole way, asking questions about the ocean, about fish and waves and sand. When they crested the final hill and the ocean came into view, vast and blue and endless, Tasha pulled over. She sat there for a long moment, staring at the water, tears streaming down her face. "We were supposed to see this together," she whispered. "James and me and Bree. It was our dream." Richard reached over and squeezed her hand. "He's here. In spirit. I believe that." They spent the day on the beach. Bree ran through the waves, shrieking with joy. Tasha walked along the shore, letting the water lap at her feet, feeling connected to James somehow. Richard collected shells, his sketching supplies in hand, capturing the beauty around them. They ate fish and chips from a beachside stand, sitting on a blanket and watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "This is perfect," Bree said, leaning against Tasha. "I wish we could stay here forever." "We'll come back," Richard promised. "Whenever you want. This can be our place." Driving home in the darkness, Bree fell asleep in the back seat. Tasha and Richard talked quietly, the kind of comfortable conversation that comes from deep friendship. "I've been thinking about something," Richard said. "You and Bree are living in that small apartment, working constantly, struggling to make ends meet. And I have this enormous house with 6 empty bedrooms." "Richard," Tasha said warningly, "just hear me out. What if you moved in? Not as a charity case but as family. You could have your own space, your own privacy. But Bree would have a yard to play in. You wouldn't have to worry about rent. You could save money, go back to school like you wanted." "We can't accept that," Tasha protested. "It's too much." "Why is it too much? I have the space. You need housing. We spend almost every day together anyway. This just makes practical sense." Richard glanced at her. "Please, let me do this. Not as an obligation but because I want to. Because you're family now." Tasha was quiet for a long time. The practical side of her brain screamed yes. Free housing, a safe neighborhood, a yard for Bree. She could save money, plan for the future, maybe even go back to school like she'd always dreamed. But accepting felt overwhelming. She'd worked so hard to be independent, to take care of herself and Bree without relying on anyone. Accepting this much help felt scary. Then she remembered her own words to Richard in the hospital. About how accepting help wasn't weakness. About how letting people in was being human. "Okay," she said softly. "Yes. Thank you." Richard's smile lit up the dark car. "Really? You'll do it?" "We'll do it. But I'm paying utilities and groceries. And I'm still working at the foundation full-time. This is a partnership, not charity." "Deal," Richard agreed immediately. They moved in 2 weeks later. Richard had prepared a whole wing of the house for them. Tasha got a large bedroom with an attached bathroom and a small sitting area. Bree got her own room, which Richard had helped her decorate in purples and blues, her favorite colors. "This is like a palace," Bree breathed, spinning in circles in her new room. "I can't believe this is ours." The house transformed with their presence. Tasha's cooking filled the kitchen with delicious smells. Bree's artwork appeared on walls and the refrigerator. Laughter echoed through halls that had been silent for years. The cold, sterile space became a home. They established routines. Breakfast together every morning before work and school. Family dinners most evenings, taking turns cooking. Weekend activities, sometimes just the 3 of them, sometimes including Angela's family or foundation staff. Richard had never been happier. He'd spent his whole life working toward success, thinking that achievement would bring fulfillment. But this, sitting at the breakfast table with Tasha and Bree, listening to Bree talk about her day at school, helping with homework, planning meals together, this was fulfillment. This was what he'd been missing. One evening, about a month after Tasha and Bree moved in, they were sitting in the living room after dinner. Bree was reading on the couch, curled up with a blanket. Tasha was going over foundation paperwork. Richard was sketching, something he did almost every evening now. "This feels right," Richard said suddenly. "Having you both here. It feels like how life is supposed to be." Tasha smiled. "It feels right to us too. You've given us such a gift, Richard. Not just the house but the stability, the security. Knowing Bree is safe and has opportunities. I can't thank you enough." "You've given me more," Richard insisted. "You've given me a family. A purpose. A reason to wake up every morning excited about the day. That's priceless." Bree looked up from her book. "We're a family now, aren't we? Not by blood but by choice." "The best kind of family," Richard agreed. "The kind you choose." The foundation continued to grow. They helped dozens of families in the first 3 months. Success stories came back to them regularly. Teresa, whose car they'd repaired, got promoted at work. A young man they'd helped with job training landed a position with benefits. A single mother they'd assisted with childcare costs was able to go back to school. Every success felt personal. Every life change justified the work and the sacrifice. Richard also made peace with his past. He reached out to old friends he'd lost touch with, not all of whom responded, but some did. He had honest conversations about how he'd prioritized work over relationships, offering apologies and hoping for second chances. Some people accepted his apologies. Others didn't. He learned to be okay with that, understanding that he couldn't control how people responded to his attempts at reconciliation. He could only control his own actions and intentions. He also attended therapy, something Tasha had gently suggested. Every week he sat in a comfortable office and talked about his childhood, his fears, his tendency to push people away. It was hard work, confronting his issues, but necessary work. "I'm breaking patterns," he told Tasha one evening. "Patterns I've carried my whole life. It's not easy, but it's worth it." "I'm proud of you," Tasha said. "Growth is never easy. But you're doing it anyway." One Sunday afternoon, Angela and her family came over for a barbecue. Mark manned the grill while the kids played in the yard. Angela and Tasha sat on the deck, drinking iced tea and watching their children laugh together. "I got my brother back," Angela said quietly. "The real Richard, not the workaholic who barely acknowledged my existence. I didn't think it was possible." "People can change," Tasha said. "When they want it badly enough and when they have support." Richard wanted to change. He just needed help figuring out how. "Thank you for being that help," Angela said, squeezing Tasha's hand. "You saved him. You saved our family." As evening fell and Angela's family prepared to leave, Emily and Noah begged to spend the night. "Please," Emily pleaded. "Bree said she'd teach me how to draw like she does. And Uncle Richard promised to help me build that model I got for my birthday," Noah added. Angela and Mark agreed and the kids cheered. After they left, Richard, Tasha, Bree, Emily, and Noah settled into the living room for games and snacks. Watching the kids play, seeing Richard patiently help Noah with his model while Emily and Bree drew together, Tasha felt overwhelming gratitude. This wasn't the life she'd planned. James's death had shattered all their carefully laid plans. But somehow, out of that tragedy and loss, something beautiful had emerged. A new family cobbled together from unexpected sources. A man reborn. A foundation helping people. Connections that mattered. Life, she thought, was strange and surprising. Sometimes the wrong number was exactly the right call. Sometimes tragedy led to grace. Sometimes broken people helped each other heal. And sometimes, love came from the most unexpected places. 6 months after moving into Richard's house, Tasha enrolled in college. She'd been accepted into a social work program at the local university with a full scholarship that Richard had quietly arranged through the foundation. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she said on her first day of classes, looking nervous and excited. "I'm 32 years old, going back to school." "You're never too old to pursue your dreams," Richard said, handing her the new laptop he'd bought for her studies. "I'm proud of you." Bree was equally excited. "My mama is going to college," she told everyone who would listen. "She's going to help families just like she helped Mr. Richard." Balancing work at the foundation, classes, and motherhood was challenging. But Tasha found it energizing rather than exhausting. She was finally pursuing the dream she'd set aside when James died. She was becoming the person she'd always wanted to be. Richard supported her fully. He helped Bree with homework when Tasha had late classes. He took over some of Tasha's foundation duties so she could focus on studying. He made sure she had everything she needed to succeed. "You don't have to do all this," Tasha protested one evening when Richard brought her coffee while she studied. "I want to," Richard said simply. "You gave me a second chance at life. This is the least I can do." The foundation expanded its programs. They added mental health counseling, recognizing that poverty and struggle took emotional tolls that needed addressing. They partnered with local businesses to create job training programs. They organized community events where families could connect and support each other. Richard hired more staff, including several people who had been clients of the foundation. He believed in giving opportunities to those who understood struggle from personal experience. One of these new hires was Teresa, whose car they'd repaired months ago. She'd gotten her nursing license and now volunteered to help foundation clients navigate healthcare systems and medical debt. "I want to give back," Teresa told Richard during her interview. "You helped me when I had nowhere else to turn. Now I want to be that help for someone else." The foundation also started a scholarship program for children of single parents, helping them afford college or trade school. Bree was going to be the first recipient when she graduated high school, though she didn't know it yet. Richard's relationship with Angela deepened. They talked regularly, not just about surface things but about their childhood, their parents, the wounds they'd both carried. They were healing together, rebuilding a relationship that had been damaged by years of distance. Emily and Noah spent weekends at Richard's house regularly. He took them to museums and parks, helped with school projects, attended their sports games. He was learning to be the uncle he should have been all along. One day, Angela called with unexpected news. "Richard, I'm coming to visit next month. Just me, not the family. I want to talk to you about something important." When she arrived, they sat in Richard's living room, the space that had once been so cold but was now filled with warmth and life. "What's going on?" Richard asked, concerned. "I've been thinking about moving," Angela said. "Mark got offered a job here in the city. Better pay, better opportunities. We've been considering it, but I wanted to talk to you first." Richard's face lit up. "You might move here?" "Angela, that would be incredible. I want the kids to know their uncle. I want us to be a real family, not just people who see each other a few times a year." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "I wasted so many years being angry at you. I don't want to waste any more time." They talked for hours about practical details and emotional hopes. By the end of the conversation, Angela had decided. They would move in 3 months. When Richard told Tasha and Bree the news, they celebrated with ice cream and happy tears. "Your family is growing," Bree said, hugging Richard tight. "Just like you wanted." As the months passed, Richard continued to thrive. He attended all his medical appointments, took his medications faithfully, and maintained a healthy lifestyle. His doctors were amazed by his sustained recovery. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Dr. Patterson said at a checkup. "Your heart is strong. Your lungs are clear. You're in better health now than most people your age who haven't had your medical history." "I have reasons to stay healthy," Richard said, showing her photos on his phone. "Family, friends, work that matters." Dr. Patterson smiled. "Those are the best reasons." Richard also made amends where he could. He reached out to former employees he'd treated poorly, offering apologies. Some accepted graciously. Others didn't respond. He learned to accept both outcomes with grace. He donated significantly to causes he'd ignored before. Environmental protection, education access, mental health services, homeless shelters. He used his wealth meaningfully, guided by a newfound understanding that money was a tool for creating positive change, not just a score to measure success. The foundation celebrated its 1-year anniversary with a community event. Over 100 families they'd helped attended, sharing food and stories. Client after client stood up to share how the foundation had changed their lives. Teresa spoke about getting her nursing license and finding stable employment. A young man named Kevin talked about the job training program that helped him get hired as an electrician. Mother named Patricia described how counseling services helped her cope with depression and get back on her feet. Richard sat in the audience, tears streaming down his face. This was impact. This was meaning. This was the legacy he wanted to leave. When it was his turn to speak, he shared his own story. About being lonely and empty despite his success. About the phone call to a stranger. About how Tasha and Bree had saved his life by showing him what really mattered. "I thought success meant money and power," he said. "But real success is measured in lives touched, in people helped, in connections made. Real success is knowing that the world is a little better because you were in it." The audience applauded, many wiping away tears. After the event, person after person approached Richard to thank him, to share their stories, to express gratitude. "This is what you were meant to do," Tasha said as they cleaned up after the event. "This is your purpose." "It took me 52 years to find it," Richard said. "But better late than never." Angela and her family moved to the city the following month. They found a house just 15 minutes from Richard's place. The kids transferred to new schools, nervous but excited about being near their uncle. Having family nearby changed Richard's life again. Weekly dinners became a tradition. He attended every school event, every birthday party, every important milestone. He was present in a way he'd never been before. He also made an effort to be a real brother to Angela, not just an uncle to her kids. They had coffee dates where they talked about everything and nothing. He helped her unpack and settle into the new house. He babysat when she and Mark needed date nights. "You're a completely different person," Angela told him one evening. "The brother I remember was cold and distant. This Richard, the one who remembers my coffee order and asks about my day, he's the brother I always wished I had. I'm trying to be the person I should have been all along," Richard said. Better late than never. As fall turned to winter, Tasha completed her first semester of college with straight A's. She was exhausted but exhilarated, loving every minute of her studies. "I forgot how much I love learning," she told Richard one evening while reviewing her grades. "I'd given up on this dream. Thank you for helping me reclaim it." "You're doing the work," Richard said. "I'm just providing support. You're going to be an incredible social worker." Bree continued to thrive. Her grades were excellent, her confidence growing. She'd made close friends at school and was involved in drama club and art class. She was becoming a remarkable young woman, full of compassion and creativity. One December evening, They were all gathered in the living room decorating the Christmas tree. It was the first real Christmas celebration Richard had had in decades. In recent years he'd worked through the holidays treating them like any other day. But this year was different. The house was filled with lights and decorations. Presents were piling up under the tree. Christmas music played. Angela's family would be over for dinner on Christmas Eve. As Richard hung ornaments alongside Tasha and Bree, with Christmas cookies baking in the oven and laughter filling the air, he felt profound contentment. "This is what I was missing my whole life," he said quietly. "This warmth, this connection, this feeling of belonging." Tasha smiled at him. "You have it now. That's what matters." "I almost lost my chance," Richard said. "If I hadn't made that phone call, if you hadn't answered, I would have died never knowing what this felt like." "But you did call," Bree pointed out. "And Mama did answer. And now we're a family." That's how the story was supposed to go. Richard hugged them both, overwhelmed with gratitude. A year and a half ago, he'd been dying alone in a hospital room, convinced his life had been meaningless. Now he was surrounded by love, doing meaningful work, connected to people who mattered. All because he'd reached out in his darkest moment. All because one kind woman had said yes to a stranger's desperate plea. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything. For saving me. For being my family. For showing me what really matters." "You saved yourself," Tasha said. "We just walked beside you." As they finished decorating the tree, Richard thought about second chances and new beginnings. About how it's never too late to change, to grow, to become the person you're meant to be. He thought about all the people the foundation had helped, all the lives that had been touched because he'd learned what compassion meant. The ripple effects of that one phone call kept spreading outward, touching more and more people. Life, he realized, was about connections. Not money or power or achievements, but the bonds we create with other humans. The ways we show up for each other. The love we give and receive. He finally understood what it meant to be alive. And he was determined to spend the rest of his life honoring that understanding, spreading kindness wherever he could, being the person Tasha and Bree had believed he could become. Spring arrived with warm sunshine and blooming flowers. Richard stood in his backyard, which had been transformed from a sterile lawn into a thriving garden. Bree had insisted they plant vegetables and flowers, turning part of the yard into a community garden where neighborhood kids could learn about growing food. "Uncle Richard, look," Emily called out, running over with a basket. "We picked the first strawberries." Richard examined the bright red berries with genuine delight. "These are perfect. Should we make strawberry shortcake?" "Yes," the kids chorused. Inside, Tasha was studying for finals, her second semester of college almost complete. She'd made the dean's list again, juggling school, work, and family with remarkable grace. Richard felt proud every time he looked at her dedication and determination. The foundation had helped over 200 families in the 18 months since opening. They'd expanded to include a community center with free childcare, job training programs, and educational workshops. Richard had donated significantly more money to ensure the foundation's long-term sustainability. But more than money, he donated time and heart. He knew every staff member by name, understood their stories, cared about their lives. He knew many of the clients too, following their progress, celebrating their successes. Teresa had become the foundation's healthcare coordinator, helping families navigate medical systems and find affordable care. Kevin, the young electrician, taught job training classes twice a week. Several other former clients had joined the team, creating a culture of shared experience and genuine empathy. Jeremy had thrived as CEO of Hawthorne Industries. The company was more profitable than ever, but also more ethical. Jeremy had implemented family-friendly policies, fair wages, and community investment programs. Richard remained chairman of the board but rarely involved himself in day-to-day operations. "You were right," Jeremy told Richard during a recent lunch. "There's more to life than work. Lauren and I are expecting our first baby. I'm actually taking paternity leave when the baby comes. Old me would never have considered that." "Congratulations," Richard said warmly. "That's wonderful news. Being present for your child, that's the most important thing you can do." Angela and her family had settled into city life beautifully. Mark loved his new job. Emily and Noah were thriving in their schools. Angela had started volunteering at the foundation, using her organizational skills to help streamline operations. The two families, Richard's household and Angela's, had become deeply intertwined. Dinners together multiple times a week. Weekend activities. Holiday celebrations. The kids considered themselves siblings more than cousins. One Saturday in May, Richard gathered everyone for an announcement. Tasha, Bree, Angela, Mark, Emily, and Noah all sat in the living room, curious about the mysterious meeting. "I have something important to share," Richard began. "As you all know, this house has become a real home over the past year and a half. It's filled with life and love in ways I never thought possible. We love living here," Bree said immediately. "I'm glad. Because I want to make it official." Richard pulled out legal documents. "I've spoken with my lawyers. This house, along with a trust fund for ongoing expenses, is being put in all of your names. Tasha, Bree, you're not guests here. You're family. This is your home too." Tasha's eyes filled with tears. "Richard, you can't." "I can and I am," Richard said firmly. "You've given me everything that matters. Let me give you security. A place that's truly yours." "But what about your sister?" Tasha protested. "Angela should." "I have my own house," Angela interrupted, smiling. "This is right. You've been taking care of my brother, making sure he stays healthy and connected. Knowing you're here, that he's not alone, it gives me peace. Please accept this." Tasha couldn't speak through her tears. Bree hugged Richard tight and soon everyone was crying and hugging. "Thank you," Tasha finally managed. "This is beyond generous. I don't have words." "Then don't use words," Richard said. "Just keep being my family. That's all I need." Later that evening, after everyone else had left and Bree was asleep, Richard and Tasha sat on the back deck watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "I never imagined my life would look like this," Tasha said. "When James died, I thought all my dreams died with him. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life just surviving, just getting by. And now?" Richard asked. "Now I'm thriving. I'm going to college. I have meaningful work. Bree is happy and secure. We have a real home and a family we chose." Tasha turned to look at Richard. "You changed our lives." "You changed mine first," Richard reminded her. "Everything I have, everything good in my life, it all started with you answering that phone call. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't answered?" "All the time," Richard admitted. "I would have died that night or soon after. Alone and empty. Never knowing what real connection felt like. Never understanding what mattered." "I'm glad you called," Tasha said softly. "Even though it was the wrong number." "It was the right number," Richard corrected. "The universe knew what it was doing. I needed you. And maybe you needed me too." Tasha considered this. "Maybe I did. After James died, I was so focused on just surviving that I forgot about living. You reminded me that there's room for joy and dreams, not just struggle and survival." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars brighten. After a while, Richard spoke again. "I've been thinking about something. The foundation is doing well, but I want to expand it. Open branches in other cities. Help more people. And I want to write a book about my experience. About how close I came to dying and what saved me." "That's a wonderful idea," Tasha said. "Your story could help a lot of people who feel alone and disconnected. Will you help me write it?" Richard asked. "Our story, really? How one phone call changed everything." "I'd be honored," Tasha said. Over the following months, they worked on the book together. Richard wrote about his lonely life before the hospital, about building an empire while losing his soul. Tasha wrote about grief and survival, about raising a daughter alone while struggling to make ends meet. Together, they wrote about that fateful phone call, about the week in the hospital, about the healing that followed. They wrote about second chances and chosen families, about how kindness could save lives. The book was published the following spring, modestly titled The Wrong Number. Richard donated all proceeds to the foundation. The book became a surprise bestseller, resonating with people who felt disconnected and alone. Readers wrote letters sharing their own stories. Some had made similar phone calls in desperate moments. Others had been the person who answered, who showed up when someone needed them. The book created conversations about loneliness, connection, and the importance of reaching out. Richard and Tasha did interviews together, always emphasizing the same themes. That it's never too late to change. That accepting help isn't weakness. That real success is measured in relationships and impact, not money or power. The foundation expanded to 3 more cities within 2 years. Each branch was run by someone with personal experience of struggle, someone who understood the clients from the inside. The model of dignity and respect remained central to every interaction. Tasha graduated from college with her social work degree. At the ceremony, Richard, Bree, Angela, and her whole family cheered so loudly they were asked to tone it down. Tasha walked across that stage with her head high, proud of herself for the first time in years. "I did it," she said afterwards, hugging Bree. "We did it. You've always been doing it, Mama, Bree said wisely. This is just one more step. Tasha began working as a licensed social worker at the foundation, using her new credentials to help clients more effectively. She specialized in grief counseling and single-parent support, drawing on her own experiences to connect with people in authentic ways. Richard continued his own therapy, continuing to work through old patterns and wounds. He'd learned that healing wasn't a destination but a journey. There would always be more growing to do, more ways to improve. He maintained his relationships carefully. Weekly calls with Angela. Regular dinners with her family. Daily conversations with Tasha and Bree. He'd learned that relationships required consistent effort, and he was willing to give that effort. His health remained excellent. He exercised regularly, ate well, took his medications faithfully. But more than physical health, his emotional health had transformed completely. The loneliness and emptiness that had defined his life were gone, replaced by connection and purpose. On the 2-year anniversary of that first phone call, Richard organized a special celebration. He invited everyone who had been part of his journey. Tasha and Bree, of course. Angela's family. Foundation staff and clients. Dr. Patterson and the nurses who had cared for him. Jeremy and his wife Lauren, now parents to a beautiful baby girl. They gathered at the community center, sharing food and stories. Richard stood to speak, looking at the crowd of people who had become his community. 2 years ago I was dying. Not just physically, though my body was failing. But emotionally and spiritually I was already dead. I'd spent my whole life chasing success while ignoring what really mattered. He paused, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Then I made a phone call. A desperate, last-ditch attempt to reach out to someone, anyone. And Tasha answered. He looked at Tasha, who was wiping away tears. She didn't hang up on a stranger rambling about dying. She didn't dismiss my fear as someone else's problem. She showed up. She brought her daughter. And they stayed. Richard's voice broke. They saved me. Not just by being present but by showing me what it means to truly live. To connect. To care about people. To use whatever resources you have to make the world better. He gestured around the room. This foundation exists because of that phone call. All the families we've helped, all the lives we've touched, it all traces back to one woman's kindness. To Tasha saying yes when she could have said no. The room erupted in applause. People stood, cheering and crying. Teresa called out, "Thank you, Tasha." Others echoed the sentiment. Tasha stood, embarrassed by the attention. I just answered a phone. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't, Richard said. You did. And that made all the difference. As the celebration continued, Richard found a quiet moment with Tasha and Bree in a corner of the room. I want you both to know something, he said seriously. These past 2 years have been the best of my life. Everything before, all the success and money and achievements, none of it compares to having you as my family. You're our family too, Bree said, now 10 years old and growing into a thoughtful young woman. You're not my dad because Papa James was my dad. But you're my family. You're important to me. You're both important to me, Richard said. More important than anything. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that. Being the person you believed I could be. Making you proud. You already make us proud, Tasha said, hugging him tight. Every single day. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Richard stood at the community center entrance, shaking hands and hugging people goodbye. Person after person thanked him, shared how the foundation had changed their lives, expressed gratitude for his kindness. But Richard knew the truth. They had changed his life. Every person he helped, every connection he made, every moment of genuine care and compassion, it healed him a little more. They were saving him just as much as he was helping them. Driving home that night with Tasha and Bree, the car full of leftover food and comfortable silence, Richard felt complete. Not perfect, never perfect. Still working on himself, still growing and learning. But complete in the ways that mattered. He had family. He had purpose. He had connections that nourished his soul. He was making a real difference in the world, leaving a legacy of compassion rather than just capital. And it had all started with a wrong number. With a moment of desperate vulnerability. With one kind woman saying yes when she could have said no. Thank you, he said again as he'd said 1,000 times before. You're welcome, Tasha replied as she'd replied 1,000 times before. Always. As they pulled into the driveway of the house they all called home, Bree said sleepily from the back seat, "This is a really good story, isn't it? About how we all found each other." The best story, Richard agreed. And the best part is it's still being written. Every day we get to add new chapters. I hope we get to write chapters together for a long, long time, Bree said. We will, Tasha promised. This family, this chosen family, we're forever. And they were. Richard had finally found what he'd been searching for his whole life. Not in boardrooms or profit margins, not in achievements or acquisitions, but in the simple, profound act of human connection, in showing up for people, in caring deeply and loving fully. He'd learned that the most important call he ever made wasn't a business deal or a strategic partnership. It was that desperate phone call to a wrong number at 11:47 p.m. on a night when he thought he was dying. That call had saved his life. But more than that, it had taught him how to truly live.